Development of the agricultural sector is Nigeria is the surest and most efficient means of achieving growth and sustainable development. However, the wave of insecurity rocking the country has threatened the development of the agricultural sector. According to data from the National Bureau of Statistics, Nigeria's food inflation, well, at the moment stands at about 21.79%. The highest we've seen in over 15 years. The persistent uptick of food inflation, the NBS says, is attributable to security challenges in the food-producing areas in the country, where farmers face frequent attacks by herdsmen and bandits in the various farms. At the last MPC meeting, the governor of the Central Bank of Nigeria, Mr. Godwin Emefiele, says that in terms of funding, the bank has disbursed funds under its various agricultural interventions towards improving the food supply in Nigeria, such as the disbursement of 107.60 billion to 548,109 farmers, cultivating 703,619 hectares of land between quarter 4 and quarter 1, that's quarter 4 2020, quarter 1 of 2021. To boost dry season outputs in support of agricultural value chain development. The CBN governor also disclosed that total disbursements as of the end of February 2021 amounted to 1.48 trillion naira on the various agricultural programs, of which 686.59 billion naira was disbursed under the Commercial Agricultural Credit Scheme. Despite the Apex Bank's significant inventions in the agricultural sector, the rising insecurity in some food-producing areas is limiting the expected outcomes in terms of supply to the market, thus contributing to the rise in food prices. Well, to shed more light on this, I have joining me live in the studio Chief Executive Officer of Farm Credit, NG, African Farmer Mogaji. Thank you very much for your time. He is also the chairman of the LCCI Agricultural and Agro-Allied Group, so he wears two caps. Thank you very much for your time. It's good to see you.
Thank you. Good to see you too.
Yes, I was live from the CBN headquarters on Tuesday, and I listened clearly to the CBN governor talking about interventions into the agricultural sector. Before we go to the interventions, he actually agreed to that fact that if we don't address what is at hand, inflation on the food side might even go higher. Yeah. Now, this is the importance between security and food security. I think it's one way, it's now interwoven. Take us through what you make of the submission of the CBN governor and how can we get it better?
First and foremost, food security is actually the real security.
Honestly,
not the insurgency. Yeah, because insurgency affects our pockets, in various states, local governments, though it's on the increase. However, when it comes to food security, it affects almost everybody at the same time. So if we're not food secure, we're not secured. Because when people are not food secure, they turn to banditry and co. And I came across African Development Bank document some years back that actually predicts that when you're not food secure, when the economy is not good, banditry, all this kidnapping. So when I came across that document, what's happening now, just stopped to be news to me because it's a process. So we need to pay attention to the food security, not only to the security hindering farmers from going to the farms, but the greater challenge with the security is climate change. Climate change poses more of a security threat to our food systems than even the security. And that, we're not paying attention yet enough to that.
In this part of the world, when we talk about climate change and how it affects our agricultural system, what do we really need to check out? We don't have the all-season farming and all of that even in Nigeria. So take us through how that affects us practically.
So for now, we just have like one season farming.
Okay,
when it's rainy season, everybody produces at the same time, so there's a lot of wastages, no processing and co. On the other hand, when it is dry season, everybody produces the same thing at dry season, and so there's a lot of wastage also. So bottom line is that we need to embrace more irrigation. And irrigation system for Southwest is different from North Central, is different from the core North. And it has to do with topography. And so in the Southwest, where you have a lot of hills, undulating topography, the Southwest can do more with cheaper irrigation, and it's easier to do. However, in the North also, you see, irrigation in Nigeria is simple and easy, especially when we focus, especially on the small scale and subsistence farmers, because anyway, they feed us, they contribute about 70% of what we produce. So we need more initiatives and interventions and incentives to go into irrigation, because what we experienced last year, May, too much rain, June, July, no rain. I emphasize that now. If we experience that again this year with the reducing farmers going to the farm, then we would have some issues at hand. And irrigation is what I expect to be hearing from the ministries now, and also from the CBN. We need to be hearing that we're funding irrigation production, but at the small level, not anything big, because you need a lot of money to maintain those big ones. You have to import part again. Dollar is not available. So at the subsistence and small scale, that's where we need to focus our direction.
A lot to be grappled. 1.48 trillion naira. That's the figure mentioned by the CBN governor, and I heard that myself. Various schemes. I know it's not just one.
Yeah.
We have the Anchors Bora, the commercial farmers thing. You guys are the players. When we hear these kind of figures, you know what Nigerians would think. How would you say this has been properly disbursed, or how well has it gotten to farmers?
Okay, when it comes to disbursement, it's been disbursed, and that's the truth. They disburse the funds. However, my challenge that with these figures is that, has there been any document to show that, okay, we disbursed X billion to Gombe, for instance, and we actually produced this? These were the challenges. Is there any document that we can work with apart from the figure that was disbursed? We hear of the figure disbursed. We don't hear of the challenges. We don't hear of what went wrong. We don't hear of a lot of things. And we most times ask, where is the food? If the money was disbursed, are we saying it was disbursed for capital projects or working capital? Because I know most of those funds were designed as working capital. So if we're not seeing the food, if it was disbursed and we have insurgency, then it means it was disbursed to areas where they were producing. So where did they produce? What did they produce? Where is the food? Is it that CBN is now funding production to fill our silos? Then how many silos has been filled? We need some feedback on what happened and way forward, as against we're only hearing one side of how much was disbursed. So
you talked about funding irrigation and all of this. One time, we've always been talking also about technology. I also spoke to an agriculturalist some weeks ago, and he also harped on this, that is the way to go. That looking at the side as the way you are the active farmers. I'm a journalist. Now you know what can be planted, and the amount of grains that that you can get. All of these assumptions and technology. Are we also funding technological advancement? This is a time where we need to key into all of this so that we're not left behind. I'm always worried about after. If we don't take time, we will definitely be a dumping ground. People say it, but it's the reality.
So the truth is, we're likely going to be a dumping ground. With all the policies and the actions and the body language, we are going to be a dumping ground. There's power and there's regulation and there's infrastructure and there are working systems in our neighboring countries. So what will just happen is you just find an Asian man go to Benin Republic to set up the factory. They are moving here. You find the Indians do that also. So bottom line is that we're not likely to benefit, from this if we continue, at this pace. Basically, our ports, even the cocoa, cashew, last year, this year has been full of challenges. And that's where even government gets the revenue from, the dollar from. So if we can't make that simple, and Ghana there, if you go to the ports in Ghana, it's seamless. Here, it's the other way around. It's full of pain and ache. So we're not ready. We're likely to be a dumping ground, and already we're used to buying.
Yeah.
And the insecurity, insurgencies, and also high cost of dollar is discouraging many from production. So we need practical things. We don't want all this English and committees and co. Show us, let's get this done. And to be frank, and I think we expect too much of governments across board. I think the private sector, we are sleeping. And I think that we're making unrealistic claims on government. Government has what to do, but also we can swing in. Don't forget, government across board like to, stay behind and push whoever is doing something. Government doesn't really initiate. The private sector initiates, and when they see you are going in the right direction, they come to support you with all the arsenals of resources available to scale. It could be one person. But bottom line is that we need now as private sector to go out and show what can be done.
Inflation standing at 20 points, about 21 points, just for food.
For now.
And already we're projecting that core inflation will increase because it's clear. We don't know what will happen to PMS as we go on. Of course, that market might be totally deregulated. Electricity tariff is also on one side. And we see all of, so where do you see us standing in food production at this time? How do we even satisfy ourselves before we even begin to look out?
So for me, my favorite quote forever has been, out of every adversity comes a greater or equal opportunity, provided we can find it. It may be difficult. You see, this situation that we found ourselves will help us look inward. South Africans survived it. India survived it. China survived it. It's meant for us, private sector now, to begin to look inward and look at more cost-effective ways of doing things. We have had to cut down on a lot of things. The challenges in the sector is real, especially if you're operating a big or above medium agricultural enterprise. One thing can hit you and you can become a pauper now. Dollar just went up, boom. One mistake, just one genuine mistake. One mistake can take you off, because the poultry farmers now, there's no corn. Nobody would ever imagine that a kilogram of corn will be sold for 220, 225, and you find all the multinationals now throwing out LPOs here and there. But these are avoidable things, so we don't have backup. And so we need to begin to see investments, government promoting investments in especially the storage, the manufacturing. The funding that CBN needs to be giving now is to support the players, especially in the agro inputs, such that they can set up here. That's very crucial. Enough of funding, production, and co. The players will sort themselves out. But if we cannot control our seed, if we cannot control our herbicides, our chemicals, our inputs, if we depend on foreign sources and the government doesn't have money, what happens? These are long-term investments that is where CBN should be looking at. Enough of all this CACs produce tomato. When they produce it, most of it is wasting.
Yeah, I wanted to talk about that tomato storage and value addition tomato. There was a time we're looking at paste, tomato pasting and all of that. Why can't we also have our private guys get into that?
The funny thing, the tomato paste is something anybody can do in the kitchen. It's not a big deal. You can make it in the kitchen. It's available on YouTube. We do it. But bottom line is that when you make it, the regulatory agency gives you very stiff, regulations to meet with. Meanwhile, I say this, we can have two. We can have grade A, grade B, and have standards small. But we're not, putting investments in the right place. And many people are crying, as in the producers. And once you discourage the producer, When the manufacturers, the processors go and set up, the producers run away. So we have tomato has been wasting for years. This year again, last year, in the last 15 years, between January and March, tomato has been wasting. Nothing has happened in 15 years. I would expect that one of the director in the Ministry of Agriculture 15 years ago probably was head of department or deputy director. So they know all those things. And we're not getting civil servants being held accountable. You don't deliver no pay. We need to bring that. So and also I think the CBN, I may be wrong, but that's what's happening. The CBN is overburdened with meddling with things that the Ministry of Agriculture should be doing. So it's the CBN that is talking about releasing of grains as against the Ministry of Agric. So the CBN may not be able to really focus. And you don't blame them also. That's what the situation in the country. As there's a lot of pressure on them. And so we need to be hearing more recruitment from the ministry, from the CBN, especially for the agric desk. But you see, I would say CBN has really done so much. They've gone out of their way to trying to ensure that food is available. Funding has actually improved. No doubt about that, across board. Funding has improved, but I feel CBN is getting overwhelmed now, and we need, either to expand that or CBN to get the banks to expand their agri portfolios, to be able to give out loans, be more efficient. But
let's wrap up. Let's wrap up with the outlook for the sector, despite all of these challenges. There should be light at the end of the tunnel. Or is it so
I've said
blurry?
It. No. 2021 is going to be a good year for the agri sector, for the producers, for the processors, across the value chain, if you understand how to do scenario planning. You paint the scenarios because in every season, there are 2-3 scenarios that play. It's not out of that. So now that we know the funding is not really coming in like it should be, there's insurgency, it means that the few people who can take the risk will clean out and will smile to CBN. So it's a good year. It's still a good year, in spite of all the challenges.
Africa Farmer Mogaji, it's always great to have you on the show. CEO, Farm Credit NG, and also Chairman, Agric and Agro Allied. That's a group of Lagos Chamber of Commerce and Industry. Thank you very much for spending your Monday afternoon with us. We don't take this for granted. We appreciate it. Thank you
for having me.
All right.